This is a Global Skills Podcast, conversations that shape the future of work and learning. We're exploring how we close the skills gap and build a future where everyone has the chance to thrive. From education to business, connecting people, ideas, and opportunities that drive change. It's about collaboration, curiosity, and creating real impact today. Because every skill learned brings us one step closer to a more inclusive world. The Global Skills Podcast, where learning and opportunity come together.
Welcome to the Global Skills Podcast. We are going to be exploring the future of work, learning and talent. Each episode, we're going to bring you conversations with leaders, innovators and change makers. Today, I am delighted to be joined by Joe. Joe, very happy to have you here simply because you have lots of experience in industry, big corporate, SaaS, software, growing really fast, and education. Your two elements of the triangle. Next question I'm going to have to ask you is, have you worked in government? But before we do that, can you tell me just an overview of your path of how did you go from corporate to SaaS software, and which are you enjoying more?
Thanks, Vanessa, for having me. I'm sort of thrilled to be on the episode. Throughout my life, I've been in at least 45 different countries. I've traveled the world, learned from lots of people. And so I always think I'm a pretty good observer. So my knowledge is predominantly observation-based and experience-based. I would love to say that when I was in high school and college, I was the smartest kid there, but I was probably pretty average, to be perfectly honest. Graduated college with not a lot of hope in the future. I did work in government. First job was in the mayor's office in New York City. My God, that was about as sort of underwhelming as something could ever be. Found my way into tech. The next 15 years path in the early days of the internet and the World Wide Web and building systems to affect the consumer life, and had really actually pretty good work success, white collar, blue shirt. And then in my late 30s, I was thinking of had this career crisis. I felt like I was suffocating. I was making money, but I wasn't happy. I lost my sense of humor. I couldn't relate. I only knew how to work. That's all I knew. And I thought I needed a path out. And so I did what most people won't do. I took a 90% pay cut. I left a very large firm where I was a partner, on track to being on the management committee, to join a group of 5 people starting a company back in 1999. And our goal was to bring the idea of e-commerce to the world, move from brick and mortar to this sort of inspired way of shopping, thinking, engaging, etc. But building too, right? Part of why I left was I thought I was really good, but maybe I was good because of the system that I was part of. The system was beautiful. It had been developed. I mean, the firm that I was part of, Ernst & Young, I went from, it was $100 million to $1 billion. We grew over the 10 years I was there like crazy. But then I'm like, but am I any good? I know it sort of sounds funny because I was making a lot of money. So I joined a small group to try and build something. And we did. We built consultancy in the e-commerce space that we went from 5 people to 350 in 24 months. We took the company public. We sold it to IBM. It was genius. I mean, we opened 5 offices. I knew everything about talent acquisition, talent management, how do you work with all the Harvard MBAs of the world, and so on. And so then I show up in this 400,000 person organization called IBM. And actually that became even more soulless. 5 years later, I was told, for example, I spent too much time with customers. I had this global job. I was around the world meeting with literally the top executives in the Fortune 500 retailers around the world, or I guess that's the Global 500. I loved the work, but again, I had this sort of existential thinking of but am I really worth anything, or is the system? This thing was back to keep proving yourself, kid, because I came from nothing. I wanted to always prove myself. And so then I went to another startup and done it now 6 times. I've taken over from CEO. I've been a founder myself. I have run 6 companies, raised a lot of money, built them from 1, 2, 5, 10 people to hundreds. And along the way, learned just a ton about what it takes to sort of show up yourself, bring enough knowledge, and certainly the grit and the integrity that you need to be able to do this. And then the positive spirit, which is a lot of what keeps us going. So along the way, also, I became an endurance athlete and a writer, an author, and a coach. And that's been another part of the journey. But needless to say, all of what I know now as we get into deeper parts about, sort of what the future of work might look like. What does it take to recruit? What does it take to build something special? How do we reward and recognize? How do we create community? All those things I've had the experience with. And it's been just a blast. And I feel like I'm still early in my career. although probably the number of years I've been at it wouldn't prove that, but that's how I feel.
It's like a whole new career. And I think, God, there's so many things that you just said there I definitely want to ask you about. But the one that stands out for me is just that comment about certain corporations, organizations just feeling soulless. And
Mm.
I think a lot of people, I don't know, if you've seen the statistics, but it's something like mid 70% of people are actually unhappy working. And I think the career guidance at an early age is lacking. And
Mm.
that's what it was for me 20 years ago. And now I'm thinking, gosh, if you were today going through the schooling educational system and knowing how fast we're in industry and we're just keeping up, there's no way career guidance and teachers are able to keep up with the pace if we're barely. And so what does that mean for the next generation coming through and the guidance that they're getting? And if they end up in the wrong path, how many more people will experience that feeling of, I'm in a system, is it the system that works? And not having that's connected to something. Their soul is
Mm.
alive.
I think, at least in our human history mind, the apprentice model has always been a very successful model from 2000 years ago through to my career. Hung around with really smart people. We watched what they did. We spent time apprenticing and following them. I don't know that it exists that way anymore. So, but that concept works, but our systems don't replace it with anything else. And this is why I think we're lost. So, we used to have people who cared about career development, whether you like the pyramid or not. It helped you grow or go, kind of speak. You had development of different levels in a career. And now, I don't know that people are that important to the system more than profit. I think that we'll dispatch people without even thinking. I don't think that we help them grow and develop at the level that we should. And so I do think it's a moment to pause. And I don't think that AI on its own is the answer. So one example, we have an education system that probably was designed 150 years ago and we still use it. We think about the sage on the stage, this teacher who knows everything and stands in front of us and tells us what to do and forms our thinking. I think that we have to flip it. Just like a classroom, I have to think we have to flip the way that we work. I think it's more collaborative. It's about expertise available when we need it. It's about having a structure that mirrors more of how we live. I work project, oh my God, it's almost 15 years ago where we're trying to create project-based high schools. No more subjects, 130 different projects, built critical thinking and literacy skills, but you didn't have to do it by sitting in trigonometry or history because everything that you did pulled on all of that, the things that you needed to learn, to live, to succeed, to be part of. And now with AI, we can do that even better. But we have to reframe. We cannot sort of just say, here's the way it works, just zip it and follow, because no one believes that anyway. And they know that they're lost because the minute that something goes wrong, the senior leadership team comes up with a spreadsheet and starts crossing names off of a list. What value do they think we deliver? Fundamentally, number one, I think we have to rethink. The concepts are good. The implementation has to be different. So how would you apprentice people? We have to create an environment that could mirror what it is that we learned and how we learned it. Maybe it should go 4 times as fast as it took me because I had to do it in a much more manual way. Like high school is not 4 years of learning. It's 4 years of growing up. Just happens to be that was a system that worked well in a farming and agrarian kind of nation. And so there's all these differences right now in the US. There's this thing going on in the highest end schools, the Harvard, the Princetons, the MITs, that more kids now will go and they drop out because they want to go work on a startup. They don't want to miss the opportunity to be part of something. But they're trading one community for another community. But they have to fall into a place that actually will help them grow and develop, that people are there to answer questions. And I think we're going to have to think much more about a network effect, the birds of a feather model, and about people like me and you, Vanessa. We're going to donate and use our time to help and support people along the way so that you can take that step, but you shouldn't feel alone. Navigating a career is going to be hard and get harder because it's not going to be clear what to do. But we're going to have to replace what work did for us, what our local community used to do for us, what our churches used to do for us, what all these systems used to provide. We now have to have an alternative because otherwise we don't need just being all on our own. So I actually think there's a good path forward, but it's going to be different.
And it probably means, and it's the whole reason behind this podcast is, well, how can we bring industry, education, and let's face it, government, their role is really to create the funding for these two players to come together. Because if they're talking to each other, speaking the same skills language and career pathway language, and if we change the educational system so that, I love the apprentice idea. If I think about the degree I took, a business international commerce degree, it was very theory. I came out, everyone was either going to be a consultant, an accountant, maybe they go on to do law. Whereas the apprenticeship model, it embeds you, you're in there, you have a mentor, you have an ally, it's so much value. But I don't know if it's the same in America. In Europe, for example, the apprenticeship models typically with plumbers, electricians, tradesmen and women. I've seen maybe graduateships for early grads. It's not necessarily putting you on a pathway and injecting you up in every scenario. So it's an interesting concept. You mentioned birds of a feather model. I actually haven't come across that term. What is that?
People are doing like work in communities. I'm part of a group called the Unchartered Group, and it's a group of founders and funders and big thinkers. And we have, for example, a WhatsApp group that allows us to share and ask questions, even though we're not working together directly. But it's amazing the kind of trust that can be built in a group that has a shared interest in making a difference by building new companies with new ideas. Sometimes as simple as the other day, I saw someone say, hey, does anyone have a login for Sora, the new AI generator from OpenAI, to the pitch that could someone review it to? And the generosity of everyone, because it's equal, is very high. And so I think there are groups like that that are forming. It takes someone to sort of kick it off, but then it runs. I'm actually part of, like, as a speaker series. We'll do a monthly event and bring people together. So there are those forums where we can get to information. Of course, we can do it online the same way. I don't think we'll make it without it. I don't think we can just ask OpenAI a bunch of questions and get all of our answers. I think it's a great tool to complement, to kick off, to initiate, to do research faster. But still, the way that the human system works, from everything from our base fundamental instinct to intuition to insights to intellect, these all take time to develop. About the part with changing some of the way the systems work, sadly, we might have to wait till some of the people running these systems are gone because they hold on to them pretty tightly. I think the next generations are not going to tolerate sort of the way that we think today and do. So we're going to have to bring them in sooner. I love the idea of the curiosity factor as a mechanism for learning and growth. I've always had this sort of like, I just want to know. The more you want to know, the more you'll learn. The more you learn, the more you have something to say, the more value that you can create. These are things that are under our control. I don't always have to depend on the system. And I didn't become a writer, and now I actually would call myself an author because I have 2 books. I didn't become that because someone did something for me. It became that because I've written every day for over the past 4,700 days in a row. And you will become good at what you do. And so if you want to be good at something, I never thought I'd write 2 books. I'm working on a 3rd. These are things that we can create for ourselves. Of course, as I get to the publishing part, you pull people in who know. And so there's always a way, but it should start with ourselves.
But for those listening that are nearly feeling institutionalized, they're working for a large corporate, they have a lot of dependency in terms of costs every month. The idea of leaving, even though their soul is beginning to be affected by going to work every day, the idea of leaving is just terrifying. And they know they need perhaps more skills. And I think you describe it beautifully of, really, what do they say? 10,000 hours of reskilling, upskilling. Then you nailed something. I don't know if I necessarily agree in today's terms with how AI can advance your ability to learn. Having said that, what advice would you give them based on the experience that you had? Because you were mid-30s when you made that move.
The second book that I wrote, Living Intentionally, goes back to what's your purpose in life. And if you can connect to that, then it's easier to make a decision. I think that to live a soulless life where all you do is make money, it'll never be satisfying. And so while you think there's a big risk to leaving that, there's actually 0 risk to leaving that, because you'll end up with probably not being a very healthy person. You won't take care of yourself. You won't show up well. It will not be accretive, and it will not be compounding in a positive way. For me, I'm not sure that we would even be having this conversation, because I was on a really bad path. You work 80 hours a week. I haven't had a drink in 20 years, but you know what you used to do on a Friday and a Thursday and a Wednesday and a Tuesday? And life is falling apart. I ate poorly. I couldn't run a mile or do a push-up. I was falling apart, although everyone would say I was succeeding because I had a lot of money in my brokerage account. but we can meet all these people who are successful later on and they're not really all that happy with their lives. So maybe, in fact, look, I can't say that everyone can go live in a studio apartment and survive. I don't know what anyone's needs are. But what I know is that you do have to make a move. Otherwise, you're not going to be happy with your life. You have to have agency. You have to make a decision. So maybe, Vanessa, I do a lot of coaching and I always start with like, there's 168 hours in the week. And I think we can find time to do the things that matter to us. If we want to learn how to code, I mean, look, right now we could use Cursor or Replit or any Claude code. We could become coders quickly. We could do this between 7 and 8 at night. We don't have to watch Netflix or go out. If it's important to us, back to our purpose, then we can prioritize it. If it isn't important, then I guess we have to accept what we decide, because the agency is ours to decide what to do with. But I had to make these shifts myself. I had to put in the time and change. That's when I left that big paying job. I got 25 hours back in the week because I went from working 80 to like 55 or 60 hours. I felt like I had all this free time, And so I could fill that back in with other activities. And so if we're very conscious about how we use our time, we can then accomplish more. The time horizon also is fine too. Like there isn't a rush. There's not a rush to go create the next life. Let's enjoy each moment of it, the learning, the struggle. I love discomfort. The harder it is, the more I grow, the more I enjoy it. So I lean into that. And then the choices are ours, and whatever choices we make are the life we create. So while a little bit scary, it actually works out way more than it doesn't. But we're sure of one thing. If you don't move, we know where we end up.
Someone said a powerful line to me about the graveyard has many multi-million entrepreneurs.
Yeah, the utility of that money at some point, be coaching this young guy, a very successful investment banker, and I don't know, his net worth was 10 million US. And I said, well, what are your goals? He said to get to 20 million. And I'm like, okay, how long will that take? He said, probably, like the next 5 or 7 years and I'll get there. And I'm like, so what are you going to do with additional 10 million? He said, well, I don't know. I said, then so you're going to use 7 years of your life to get $10 million that you're not going to use. I said, what's the utility of that? He's like, I never thought about it like that. Before you endeavor to go do something, think about it because you're probably fine financially. And now you're doing something that's going to sacrifice most of your life for no good reason. And so I think we have to put it in, if you could say, what else would you do with your time? Imagine if you could donate time to local community work, to getting involved in something like Uncharted, to doing so many different activities that are available to us where we would learn and we would grow and we would experience. In 2017, I ran a marathon on 6 continents in 6 days. And that's why I wrote my first book, to sort of how did I get here? How did this happen? Because I really was, just barely average when I was growing up and had no money and nothing. My parents weren't Olympic athletes, nothing. Grew up just in New York City. And so,
but what drove you, Joe, because that's a huge accomplishment. What drove you?
As the story would go, that what drove me was building myself into something that I could be proud of. The person that would look in the mirror and say, I like what I see, that you have integrity and resilience, that you have vitality, you contribute to the earth, that you're growing and thriving and supporting other people. So it all became extremely empowering to me. And it replaced all the things I didn't have or I thought I didn't have. So if I didn't have something, then I created something else. And when I decided I was going to go do that, it was a big project, to be sure. It took me 9 months just to plan it, did it by myself. But I had built a system, me, who could run a lot, who could fly a lot. I had practiced it. And then I translated it into some bigger idea. That's what we all can do. But no question, Vanessa, if you told me when I was 25 or 35 I would ever do something like that, I would have said, no possible way. That's not me. Impossible.
Why? Right? Why did your younger self think that?
Oh, because I had the identity of this kid who had nothing. That's where, when you start with sort of nothing, that's what you think you're going to end up with. Why would you believe you'd end up with more? It was fine to be right in the middle, in the median. And I was but I sort of realized later on in my life that I wasn't okay with where I started. I wanted to create new beginnings all the time, never an end. It was always a new beginning. No matter what happened, I'm oh my God, this is really an opportunity. I can go do this. Always led with yes. I wanted to make everyone around me's life easier. So if you said, hey, would you do this? I'm like, yep, I got it. And then people are like, oh, that guy makes my life easier. So maybe I want him around some more. And then you start to build a reputation of the yes person, not the no person. And like, who would you rather be around? I'm curious. And I start learning and I start doing and I start writing it down and I start challenging myself. And the next thing you know, I'm more powerful. And people are like, oh, look at that. This person can do that, And so I was just taking control to try and basically create a different trajectory that I guess wanted, but didn't initially know that was possible until I started leaning in. And then it was as if the clouds cleared and everything was possible. And it all came from just the decisions I made and the accountability that I had to myself and the discipline that drove my life.
And do you think it's possible to save that time? And, if someone was in their 20s right now, and maybe they're feeling disenfranchised.
Had I known what I know now, like the reason I wrote 2 books was I thought, wow, I should share how hard it was. Figured out all on my own because I wouldn't have minded accelerating through that. That would have been fun, because I could do even more. So I don't have any regrets. I will never live with a regret. I always say, look, I was there when I decided, so I should be happy with that. But what I do know, and I love my life, maybe I could have had a bigger impact on other people. This isn't about like making money. In this new book I'm writing, there's a chapter called If I Am Not My Accomplishments, What Am I? And so I'm reframing the being versus the doing, the miles versus in the minutes versus the empowerment through my potential, the ability to show up and deliver on being the path, not on the path. And so that is what happens.
Be the path, not on the path. That's
Yes.
really, really powerful.
Well, when you go in this direction, this is what opens up.
Yeah.
Like I didn't know this. I have friends now who are, neuroscientists and philosophers and all that. Oh, by the way, to anyone who thinks that the doors aren't open, I was never invited either. I just always then took the other side. Like, well, then I might as well have a party instead of waiting. I might as well ask you, do you want some help? I offer all the time. Hey, can I do that? 90% of the time people say no. I'm like, okay, thank you. 10% of the time, like I wrote the book, I'm like, hey, I can do a talk at one of your events. And they're like, no, that's okay. Sooner or later, someone says yes. Keeps opening up and it keeps opening up. It's just, if you open with your heart open and something to say and something to give and be, it really starts to work in your favor.
So with your company now, what is it that your business does and what philosophy do you have around, obviously the title is Global Skills Podcast. So the whole idea is we want to understand leaders, what they're doing to actively close the skills gap and future-proof their talents.
So we're an AI software platform to help small businesses sell and create customer relationships. So imagine you got a lead, let's say you're a lawn care company. You got a lead from Google or from a website. We would take that lead, we would score the lead, route the lead, qualify it, and then use our AI voice to have the conversation with the consumer. And we would then take that, hopefully close the deal, schedule the business, and then actually take the payment and then pass it on to the CRM. It's an integrated, like I always say, can't do with only AI, but you can't do it without AI. So it's a completely integrated data workflow platform for selling for small business. So when we built the company, I always start with this, which is core values. What are the values of the company? Start there. We don't negotiate on them. We have 5 values. Start with respect, teamwork, positivity, nurturing, and being bold. Those are our 5 core values. In the beginning, we wrote the Rainmaker Constitution, which is our commitments to our customers and to the world as to how we will behave, how we will protect people's interests. And then we start hiring people who predominantly are curious, because everything we're trying to do is novel, trying to bring new ideas, break traditional thinking, not do it the way it's done. So we all have to be willing to say, I guess we could try it differently. So that's really core. Of course, we need some really good skills, but I'd rather find someone who solved other novel problems, because I don't know exactly how we're going to solve it today. I look, for example, my neuroscience friends have helped me rethink how we do lead scoring by thinking about this way that the brain's intuition works around adaptive behavioral neurobiology. And so if anyone's ever done anything that's sort of more curious, then that probably could apply to what we're doing. Because We can write documents with the help of ChatGPT. We can use Cursor or Claude Code to start our coding. But those are only sort of the strands. They're not the architecture. The architecture of both living through my book, Living Intentionally, or the architecture of our platform are all about how the pieces connect to each other and how they support each other and how they actually inform each other. That part, we needed some experienced people. I've worked with some people in the past who've architected some pretty interesting solutions. So they started the foundation. And from there, we just hire people who want to grow. It's like a very interesting kind of interview process. It's not a very technical interview. The depth around integrity, like building a system, like for us especially, like if a system hallucinated and a small business owner didn't like what we were doing, like what are we going to do about that? It's a good behavioral question. How do you think about curiosity? And by the way, we're not looking for people to work 80 or 90 hours a week. We want you to bring your whole self, your whole life. Got a lot of people on our team who have young kids and they have to make that fit in. I would never run a company that told everyone they have to come in the office 5 days a week. Like this is about creating something interesting and intriguing. And then in our job descriptions, we write them so creatively that we typically get between 1 and 2,000 applicants per job description that we put out into the market because we stoke people's curiosity. We're like, hey, you want to go do something fun? And the best part is like, if you don't, then you're not applying. But there are a lot of people who are like, wow, yes. And like my job, I'm an instigator. I like to be productively disruptive. I would love it where everyone would do everything and all I would have to do is sort of show up. But I take and write a lot of our products strategy stuff, give it to our head of product. I'm like, I wrote this over the weekend. And she laughs at me. She's like, oh my God, what do you do? But, like I feel like it's bubbling up inside us and I want that from everyone. So it's fun and it's hard. It's hard meaning like we're trying to do something novel. So you got to really bring some real thinking. And so it's different. And we're not all 23 years old. So it's got a good variety there. We're about 25 people right now in the SaaS business.
And growing?
Yeah. The crazy thing is the last company I ran, my product and engineering team had 100 people. This one has 10, and we're getting done more work than when we had 100.
It's amazing. You are not the first leader to say that to me in the last 6 months. Yeah.
Really different. And all that really does is it makes us go faster or be more creative. We started building the software in April, and November 15th, we will roll out our version 1. We rolled out like a .7 release in July, but our version 1 will be, 6 months, 7 months.
And are you bootstrapping or have you brought on investment?
We did bring on some investment, partially because to hire a couple of the senior people, they need to make some money. I feel that's fair. Yeah, we don't focus on creating unicorn companies. We want to be unicorns ourselves, unique and different in what we do. And that is, I think, compelling to both our customers and to the world because we hear a lot of wash, rinse, repeat from typical press.
So it sounds like it's a good place to be product about to launch. Thank you for making the time to talk to me because I know pre-launch can be crazy and growing. Do you foresee any challenges around teething problems for growth? Are there any challenges that you're facing at the moment to do with talent and skills? And can you share any?
Our idea is pretty wild here, right? Literally have a full-on AI conversation with someone who wants to buy something. Now, that is somewhat of an unconstrained problem because I don't know what you're going to ask. So yes, we think the first month is going to be a little bit interesting. We've been doing some testing and we're getting some really good results, but there are probably going to be some things that'll be a challenge. On the skills side, what we're predominantly looking for are both back to sort of like who has thought about solving this kind of human problem in tech and in the scale side of this, because at least in the US, there's 30 million small businesses. Let's say 10 million of them are our market, and we have just hundreds at this point. What do we get to tens of thousands? How does that work? So thinking about scaling now matters. The implementation, like, can we do that without any people? Like, can you talk to an AI bot and then have it translate everything you said into the way the system should work? And we have so many ideas on this that, we still need a lot of creative people. And then also be able to create marketing messages that are easy to communicate and understand so people know, what does it mean? Like, what are you really doing? So we're always like, it's easy to talk to someone about what we do, it's harder to sometimes write about it because like you have to really be very clear. So yeah,
Yeah.
we're going to continue to hire really creative, interesting people. And by the way, this is not only people with 20 years of experience. I've hired people who I find to be just really great thinkers earlier in their career, whatever, just like who want to do this. That desire will, sort of beat anything almost every day.
That number of applications is extensive. How do you go about screening a few thousand for a job?
We actually do use AI to help us because we are an AI company. So we've built some questions we ask against sort of the novelty of what someone presents back to us. So we can parse the 1,200 or 1,500 down to a couple hundred pretty quickly. The ease of which it takes to do an application does make it a little noisy, especially like if you went on LinkedIn and it's easy apply and people are just pushing a button. I don't even know if they're that interested. We're always looking for someone who shows that additional level of interest, anything. I know there's probably companies that don't care that much, but if someone puts something interesting and novel in their application, we pay a lot of attention. And I think that's what we should all be doing all the time. I mean, probably all your listeners will remember that I ran a marathon on 6 continents in 6 days. Of course, we could do a whole podcast on that because of what did I learn from that? That novelty has carried me both in the planning and the follow through because you're not doing that every year. But it's the form of the thinking that someone would always say, like, if you did that, I'd probably like to talk to you. Even if I don't hire you, I'd still like to talk to you. And similarly, I'm always looking for someone, whatever dimension, doesn't have to be just in the code. Can you abstract? Like, there's so much that we live through, Vanessa, that we sort of go through without paying much attention to the implications. Like if you're going in an interview, like bring some insights, do some research, think about what is really happening, like bring a new idea. Don't just answer questions. Like this whole neurobiology thing, we had no idea we were going to go down that path. I just happened to be deeply curious around it, about human consciousness, etc. And then I started thinking, oh my gosh, there's a lot of this that fits into the sales process. Could we codify that? But no one told me that I should be doing that. So all of us have this opportunity to craft and create sort of unique perspective. It doesn't even have to be right, and it might not even be 100% relevant, but it will show someone what your curiosity is like, what you're capable of doing, where your initiative is. And so those really make a difference, especially in a world like we're facing, which is going to be a lot more unpredictable. So then
I couldn't agree with you more. And I'd love to know your opinion on this. As organizations grow, I think they need to play a bigger role in helping people really identify the learning that they need. A lot of people are just worried, and maybe we're going to face a society where high numbers of people are not working. But in this interim period that I think we're going to be in for a while, what role do you think employers should play in terms of helping individual employees understand the skills gap they have, where they are? Should they offer the ability to transfer your skills into other areas? And should they provide the learning to get there? Or is it just down to the individual?
No, that's not right. We're social creatures. We're supposed to support each other. We are not supposed to say, good luck, hope it works out. That's just unfair. I think that we have to provide a learning environment, which is that one that's a growth environment, not just critical, doesn't have finite structure to it, that provides resources and ideas to people, that creates a learning environment. Yeah, of course the job has to get done. That's fine. For a while, remember the days of Google when they gave people a whole bunch of time to just do some general research? They don't do that much anymore. But it was a really good concept underlying, which is that we need people thinking, embracing, and engaging. So the culture has to be in alignment with that. Our nurturing culture is important because that means we need to commit to each other. Positivity is fun because we also want to laugh and enjoy what we're doing. We're very serious about it, Yeah. We want to build a business that's worth something. But yes, I think that organizations and managers should be responsible. Now, if they don't feel capable, well, then maybe we should answer that question as to why they're in the roles that they are. But I don't think this is black or white kind of answer. I think we have to change how we work in this world of abundance. And in a world of abundance, we have to explain how to use resources, what we encourage. There are companies that say, don't use AI. I'm like, well, we should never have edited anyone's document. We should never have helped anyone. Look, I mean, it's a tool. It just can't be the only thing you do. I think we also need to define sort of what we think is a career path in the future. And so help people get that. Yeah, we have to re-embrace the role that the company plays because they're still going to exist. And we all should feel like we have something that we can be part of because we perform better when we're part of something than on our own.
And I think the majority of leaders actually want to play a proactive part in all of it and not just be, as you say, receiving the Excel spreadsheet and having to cross names out because every name is livelihood. I don't think I fully appreciate it. I used to work in recruitment. It's a good 10 years ago now, and that I had my agency. And I remember someone saying to me, and it's mad that I'm now this age. I was maybe late 20s, 30, and I remember him saying to me, and he was early 40s. He was a spring chicken, and he said to me, I'm facing ageism. I've been applying for roles. I'm not getting called. And I remember thinking, well, maybe you're a bit older, but like I'll get you something. And I got him something. But now that I'm this age, I'm hearing the same thing again. People are saying the same. They're not getting called. Now, maybe it's 50 years plus, but they have so much value. Someone of that level of experience and skill set has so much value. And maybe they just need a bit more AI skills or whatever it might be. Well, what are your thoughts on, and maybe someone that age is that it is facing ageism or they're not getting called for interview and they're not being told why? And what would you say to them?
Yeah, I think you touched on it a little bit, Vanessa. We know what we know, but we have to create something that's worth something in the future, not just what we know. We can't only trade on what we did. We have to create something more. And I think that investing in understanding how the world is changing, how these tools are going to affect what we do, bringing new ideas. I've rarely found someone who wouldn't entertain a new and creative perspective, no matter how old they are. Look, there's a 25-year-old who could be closed-minded as a 55-year-old. I think this is about having that deep level of curiosity, learning skills, adaptability skills, showing a willingness to bring the experience into a new world. Not saying this is the way I did it, this is the way it should be done. Yes, I think that gets closed off because we know the world is changing. And so it's opening your heart and your mind to the future. I don't think it matters how old you are. I think it matters how productive you can be. And by the way, it's fantastic to have more experience from time to time in terms of scenarios or instances that maybe we want to avoid. So, but it can't just be that. Like I often think like, it's great that I did those 6 marathons on 6 continents, but I still have to be continuing to do more now and into the future. What's my plan? What am I doing? How am I building myself? Both reskilling. I have become pretty darn good at leveraging the AI tool set, coding or otherwise. And so I'm always a contributor. It doesn't matter what my title is. I don't care that I'm the CEO, co-founder of the company. I am actively involved in doing it every day. I think that's what we have to bring. And then all of us are open to any person if you bring that.
Couldn't agree with you more. If you told me a few years ago that I could create a website over a weekend with different functionality and even an e-commerce section, I'd be saying not a chance. So right. I think it's liberating once you get past that fear bump and thinking, oh God, this is someone in their 20s that can do it. And then all of a sudden, actually with your experience, expertise and knowledge and know-how, AI is like a superpower when used the right way, whether it's within the business or for yourself to do different things. I read a lovely line from Vishen, the CEO of Mind Valley, and he said he sat with his father and his father just needed some healthcare guidance, I think. And he just sat and he created an app for him and plugged it in so he could sit and just get a little bit of guidance, not medical guidance, but just light level. And his father was blown away. And I think when you start being curious, like you say, and thinking about the true potential and you have the skill set, the sky is the limit, really.
I think we should be more afraid of staying where we are than moving forward. I often talk in my coaching about that our system works in 2 states. One's not that favorable. One is surviving, right? And the other is thriving. To thrive, we actually have to disrupt our system as the way the human system works, but it'll grow. Go to the gym, lift weights, your muscles will rip, they'll build stronger. We can build more mitochondria and more red blood cells through activity, build more neurons through thinking, reading, participating. There are ways to continue to grow and develop as we go along. But if we sit on the couch and don't do anything, that's surviving. And that's when we get stuck. And it's actually only surviving for a short period of time because it ends up, the body will decline from a state of survival. Just like the rusty swing set in your backyard, Kids never use it, it gets rusty because it's not been used. I think this is a time where we all have to sort of lean into the growth opportunity emotionally, physically, intellectually, in our community, towards each other, towards ourselves, and then we'll share in the abundance that's in front of us that we can all be part of. And that would be the most magical outcome we could ever have.
And it might even be coupled with a 1 or 2 day working week. Because AI is doing all the hard stuff.
Exactly. There you go.
We have a closing tradition of the podcast to ask 2 questions, but you only have to answer one. The first question is there a skill that you have from when you were younger that you don't use anymore, that you wish you did or that you're going to? Or 2, and I feel like we've potentially covered it, what's the skill that you think you really need moving forward? If you were starting out again, or if you're mid-career thinking, I need to change. But it's up to you, Joe.
Yeah, I think the skill that it's sort of funny because, like I was really good at using a calculator and a paper spreadsheet to add up numbers in the early part of my career. I don't need that skill anymore. But I think there's a lot of that where we built a skill that's been replaced by a new technology that makes us actually do the more thoughtful part of what we need to do rather than just the pure labor of what we do. And that's what actually is most rewarding to us anyway. And I think that the second question is that just unlock that curiosity component of who you are. When we're little kids, we're deeply curious and then we lose it. And that's not a good thing. So just keep on, like I always have this thing, like I just want to know. I got to know. I want to know more. And the more you do that, the more the world opens up for you and the more you'll enjoy it and appreciate it. So curious.
I couldn't agree with you more. I couldn't agree with you more, Joe. And I started my learning journey about 5-6 years ago and I haven't looked back. And now I'm hooked. Now nearly I do too much.
Better. I like it. I like it very much.
I think you've given a really, really good insight. But to be curious is the final statement. I think that's a beautiful way to end. Thank you so much for being a guest on the Global Skills Podcast.
Thanks, Vanessa.
Whether you're leading a business, shaping education, planning your next career move, or just starting out, you're part of a global conversation about how we learn, work, and grow. If you've enjoyed this episode, remember to subscribe so you never miss what's next. And for early access to new episodes, first invites to events, and a chance to connect with others driving real change, join the community at globalskillspodcast.com because the future of skills belongs to all of us.